For 3 weeks, Anthony Todt lived in this house with 4 decomposing bodies. His wife, his 3 children, even the family dog, all dead, all wrapped in blankets like they were sleeping. And when federal agents finally broke down the door, they found him barely alive, not from grief, but from a failed suicide attempt using Benadryl. The bodies had been there so long, the smell hit investigators the moment they entered. But here's what makes this different. Anthony wasn't hiding what he did. He was waiting to join them on the other side.
Regarding health lives, I feel very sad and very upset that I'm still here, and is there somewhere else you'd rather be with our family? Up on the other side? On the other side. Okay. And you do know your wife and children are deceased? Yes, and that's where I want to be. That's where you want to be. Okay.
That's Anthony Todt, 46-year-old, physical therapist, youth soccer coach, father of 3, telling detectives he's sad and upset, but he'd rather be on the other side with his dead family. The family he just admitted to killing. Notice how he didn't hesitate when asked if his wife and children were deceased. He said yes. When asked if that's where he wanted to be dead with them, he said yes again. Clear, calm, direct. On January 13th, 2020, federal agents knocked on the door of his house in Celebration, Florida, a Disney-developed community designed to look like the perfect American small town. They were there to arrest him on healthcare fraud charges. What they found inside wasn't just a fraud suspect. It was 4 decomposing bodies, and a man who'd been living with them for weeks. The bodies were Anthony's wife, 42-year-old Megan Todt, his 3 children, 13-year-old Alek, 11-year-old Tyler, and 4-year-old Zoe. Even the family dog, Breezy. All dead, all wrapped in blankets, all positioned in the master bedroom like they were sleeping. And Anthony Todt, 250-pound physical therapist, who preached family values, was barely able to stand when agents entered. He'd overdosed on Benadryl, trying to kill himself. When he recovered enough to speak, he told investigators his wife was upstairs sleeping. He called out for her, like she was alive. Then, hours later, he confessed to killing all of them. In detail, with timestamps, with methodology, with reasoning that involved the apocalypse and the afterlife, which is why you just heard him say he wanted to join them on the other side. But here's what makes this case different from most family annihilations. Anthony Todt's story didn't stay consistent. Not even close. Over the next 2 years, he would tell 4 completely different versions of what happened in that Celebration house in December 2019. Each story contradicted the last. Each version shifted blame. Each iteration revealed something new about how family annihilators construct narratives to protect themselves even when the evidence is overwhelming. Because when you break down the forensic timeline, the autopsy reports, and the physical evidence against his 4 different stories, you see something that happens in almost every family annihilation case. The perpetrator becomes the narrator, and the narrator always rewrites the ending. This is the story of what Anthony Todt said after killing his family. And more importantly, this is about why every word he said was designed to serve one purpose: making himself the victim. Let's start with what actually happened before we get to what Anthony said happened. The Todt family moved from Connecticut to Celebration, Florida in recent years. Anthony stayed in Connecticut most of the time, running his physical therapy clinic, visiting the family weekly. By 2019, everything was collapsing. Federal investigators discovered Anthony was charging insurance companies for treatments that never occurred. He was billing for patients who weren't being seen, creating fake documentation, running a systematic fraud scheme. The money was going to pay for the celebration house, to pay for Disney World trips, to maintain the image of a successful family living in a community literally designed by Disney to be picture perfect. But Anthony was over $100,000 in debt. Firms in New York were suing him. The landlord was seeking eviction. He owed more than $5,000 in back rent. In December 2019, something changed. The family, who usually returned to Connecticut for the winter, stayed in celebration. Megan stopped responding to her family's calls and texts. The kids went silent on social media. Mail piled up on the porch. An eviction notice was posted on the door. Family members requested welfare checks. Deputies came to the house on December 29th, but left when they got no response. For 2 more weeks, nothing. Then, on January 13th, federal agents arrived to arrest Anthony on the fraud charges. They'd been staking out the house. They saw Anthony walk onto the porch, barely able to move, convulsing, then go back inside. When they entered with a search warrant, the smell hit them immediately. Upstairs in the master bedroom, they found Megan's body in the bed. Zoe's body was at the foot of the bed beneath her mother's feet. Alek and Tyler's bodies were on a mattress on the floor. Breezy, the dog, was also dead, all wrapped in blankets, all in advanced stages of decomposition. The medical examiner would determine they'd been dead for weeks, probably since mid-December. Toxicology showed lethal levels of Benadryl in their systems. Megan had been stabbed in the abdomen. The boys had been stabbed. All of them showed signs of suffocation. And Anthony Todt had been living in that house with their bodies the entire time, using their phones to text family members that everyone was sick, pretending they were alive, waiting for what? That's where his stories start. That's Anthony describing the plan to die together with his family. This is from his first confession to detectives, January 2020, just hours after agents found the bodies. This is version 1 of what happened, the full confession. In this version, Anthony tells investigators that he and Megan had an agreement. They'd watched videos about the afterlife together. They believed the apocalypse was coming. They decided the entire family needed to die to pass over to the other side together, which is exactly what you heard him say in that opening. He wanted to be with them on the other side. According to this confession, Anthony went to 4-year-old Zoe's room first. He rolled his 250-pound body on top of her while she slept, suffocating her. Then he moved to the boys' rooms. He suffocated and stabbed 11-year-old Tyler. He suffocated and stabbed 13-year-old Alek. Listen to how he describes this decision-making process in the interrogation. He's describing conversations he claims he had with his children about death, about what would happen if mommy or daddy died. And his conclusion was, they should all die together. He's framing child murder as a family decision. Then, according to version 1, he went to Megan. She had already stabbed herself in the stomach, he claims, but the wound wasn't fatal. So, Anthony suffocated her too, putting his hands over her mouth and a pillow on top of her until she stopped breathing, finishing what she'd started. He moved all the bodies to the master bedroom, wrapped them in blankets, positioned them like they were sleeping. Then he tried to kill himself. Overdosed on Benadryl. Considered using a knife, but chickened out and waited to die alongside them. That's Anthony explaining why he's sad, not because he killed his family, but because the plan to die together didn't work. He survived. He failed at dying with them. That's his regret. Not the murders, not the suffocation of his 4-year-old daughter, not the stabbing of his sons. He's upset that he's still alive. But he didn't die. He lived. For weeks, he lived in that house with their decomposing bodies. until federal agents arrived. This confession is detailed. It's specific. It includes timeline information. It describes methodology. It admits to suffocating his daughter by rolling on top of her, a detail only the killer would know. And in that opening clip you heard, he confirms he knows his wife and children are deceased and that he wants to join them on the other side. This is exactly what you'd expect from someone caught with overwhelming physical evidence who knows denial is impossible. But version 1 wouldn't last long, because 6 months later, Anthony Todt's story completely changed. In June 2020, from the Osceola County Jail, Anthony wrote a 27-page letter to his father. This is version 2. Megan did everything. In this version, Anthony comes home one day in December to find Megan covered in blood. She tells him she's killed the children. He runs to their rooms and discovers all 3 kids dead. Megan has given them Benadryl pudding pie, a dessert laced with lethal doses of the drug, then killed them. According to the letter, Megan had been severely depressed. She had Lyme disease. She'd suffered multiple miscarriages. She could barely walk upstairs or care for herself. She'd become obsessed with reincarnation and believed if she died with her family, they'd all be reborn into better lives. So, she killed them. Then she drank a bottle of Benadryl and stabbed herself in the stomach while Anthony watched. He was so shocked, he ran to the bathroom and vomited. He was weak. He was traumatized. He was a victim. In this version, Anthony is completely innocent. He's the sole survivor of his wife's psychotic break. The only reason he confessed to police, the only reason he said what you heard in that opening about wanting to join them on the other side, was because he was trying to protect Megan's memory. He didn't want her family to know she'd killed their grandchildren. He was taking the blame for her. This is version 2, and it contradicts literally everything in version 1. But wait, there's more. At trial in April 2022, Anthony Todt took the stand. He testified for hours, and he told version 3 he remembers nothing. On the stand, Anthony claimed he had no memory of his confession. He didn't remember talking to detectives. He didn't remember saying he wanted to be on the other side with them. He didn't remember describing in detail how he killed each family member. He didn't remember any of it. His testimony, my testimony today, is the fact that Megan killed her kids and killed herself. He stuck to version 2, Megan did it. He came home to find them dead, but now with the added claim that his entire detailed confession was made under duress, and he has no recollection of it. The defense argued the state couldn't prove who killed whom. The medical examiner couldn't definitively determine whether the children were suffocated or strangled. The stab wounds were likely inflicted after death. There was no DNA evidence clearly proving. If you're still with me, thank you. Take a second to hit like so this case gets pushed to more people who care about justice. And let me know in the comments if something in this part of the story doesn't sit right with you. Different perspectives help us get closer to the truth. Anthony held the pillow. Maybe Megan did kill them. Maybe Anthony walked into a nightmare and just lived with it for weeks. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. They came back with guilty verdicts on all counts. 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of animal cruelty. Anthony Todt was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus 1 additional year for killing the dog. At sentencing, the judge said, "You, Anthony John Todt, are a destroyer of worlds." The godmother of the Todt children stood up and said Anthony had been controlling even when the family seemed happy. That Megan and the kids were loved by so many people that all she has left are pictures and memories. And Anthony gave a long, rambling speech maintaining his innocence. Which brings us to version 4. From prison, Anthony Todt is now suing Osceola County for $9.9 million, claiming authorities illegally went through his jailhouse mail and released it to the media. In this lawsuit, he's representing himself. He's complaining that his case became tabloid fodder, that the relationship between him and his father was publicized and sensationalized. He's positioning himself as the victim of a media circus, the victim of privacy violations, the victim of a system that didn't understand his mental health struggles. 4 years after killing his family, he's still constructing narratives where he's the one being wronged. So, let's break down what actually happened versus what Anthony said happened. Because the forensic evidence tells a very different story than any of his 4 versions. And it certainly contradicts that opening statement where he claimed he wanted to die to join them on the other side. First, the toxicology. Lethal levels of Benadryl were found in all 4 family members. Not trace amounts, lethal levels, enough to kill. If Megan made Benadryl pudding pie for the kids as Anthony claimed in version 2, why was there lethal Benadryl in her system? Did she make the poison dessert, feed it to her children, then eat it herself before stabbing herself in the stomach? That's not suicide. That's not even logical. The Benadryl indicates someone drugged the entire family, including Megan, to incapacitate them before killing them. That's premeditation. That's planning. That's someone who wanted them unconscious before he suffocated them. Second, the stab wounds. Megan was stabbed in the abdomen. The boys were stabbed. The medical examiner testified the stab wounds were likely inflicted after death, meaning someone stabbed already dead bodies. Why? If Megan killed herself by stabbing as Anthony claimed, why was she stabbed after death? If the boys died from Benadryl and suffocation, why stab their corpses? The answer: staging. Anthony was trying to create physical evidence that matched whatever story he planned to tell. He stabbed Megan after she was dead to support his later claim that she'd stabbed herself. He stabbed the boys to create confusion about cause of death. Third, the timeline. The medical examiner determined the family died in mid-December 2019, probably between December 14th and Christmas. Anthony was arrested January 13th, 2020. That's 3 to 4 weeks that Anthony Todt lived alone in that house with 4 decomposing bodies. During that time, he used Megan's phone to text her family that everyone was sick. He used the kids' phones to maintain the illusion they were alive. On December 29th, deputies came for a welfare check. Anthony didn't answer the door. Why? If Megan had killed the children and herself as he later claimed, why not immediately call police? Why not report what he supposedly walked into? Why hide? Because he was waiting. Remember that opening where he said he wanted to be on the other side with them? He was waiting for courage to kill himself, but he never actually wanted to die. The overdose was theatrical. Fourth, the confession itself. In that opening, you heard the detective confirm, "You do know your wife and children are deceased?" And Anthony responded, "Yes." He wasn't confused. He wasn't in shock. He knew exactly what happened. Watch his demeanor in the full interrogation. He's not crying. He's not breaking down. He's calmly discussing the deaths, talking about the apocalypse, explaining why they all needed to die together. This isn't someone in shock. This isn't someone traumatized by walking into a murder scene. This is someone who knows exactly what happened because he did it. The confession includes details only the killer would know: the positioning of the bodies, the method of suffocation, the order in which he killed them. If this confession was made under duress, as he later claimed, how did he know details that weren't publicly released? How did he describe methods that matched the autopsy findings? He knew because he was there. He knew because he did it. That opening confession where he admitted he wanted to join them on the other side wasn't coerced. It was detailed because it was true. So, why did his story change? Why go from full confession to blaming Megan to claiming memory loss? Because that's what family annihilators do when they realize confession doesn't generate the sympathy they expected. Let's talk about family annihilation psychology for a moment. Because Anthony Todt's case follows a pattern seen in dozens of similar cases. When a parent kills their entire family, they almost always construct a narrative where they're the hero, not the villain. The narrative goes like this: I love my family so much that I couldn't let them suffer. The world was going to hurt them. Financial ruin was coming. Social embarrassment was inevitable. I was protecting them from worse fates. And Anthony's version 1, the one you heard at the opening, the apocalypse was coming. He and Megan were saving the family by killing them before the world ended. They'd all reunite in the afterlife. On the other side, it was an act of love. But when that narrative didn't work, when investigators and prosecutors made clear that apocalypse defense wouldn't fly, the story shifted. Version 2 emerged. Megan was the killer. She was depressed. She was obsessed with reincarnation. She did this, not him. This is textbook blame shifting. When the hero narrative fails, family annihilators blame the mother. She was mentally ill. She was suicidal. She snapped. I was just trying to protect her memory by confessing to police. It's a calculated move. Dead victims can't defend themselves. Megan can't tell anyone what really happened. The kids can't testify. So Anthony rewrites the story with himself as the tragic survivor who lost everything. When that doesn't work, when forensic evidence contradicts the blame shifting, the story shifts again. Version 3. I don't remember. I was under duress. I was mentally ill. I wasn't in control of myself. This is the final defense. Diminished capacity. I'm not responsible because I wasn't mentally sound. The confession doesn't count because I was coerced. The evidence doesn't matter because I wasn't myself. Each version of Anthony Todt's story serves the same purpose: avoiding accountability. Each revision removes him further from responsibility. Each iteration makes him more of a victim. But here's what doesn't change across all 4 versions. Anthony Todt was the only one alive when authorities arrived. Everyone else was dead, wrapped in blankets, positioned in the master bedroom, decomposing for weeks while he lived in that house. If Megan killed the kids and herself, why did Anthony stay? Why not call 911 immediately? Why text family members pretending everyone was alive? Why hide from deputies during welfare checks? If the apocalypse was coming and they planned to die together, as he said in that opening, why did Anthony survive? Why did he overdose on Benadryl, a notoriously non-lethal method of suicide, instead of using the knife he claims to have chickened out from using? Because he never actually wanted to die. He wanted his family dead, but he wanted to survive. The overdose was theatrical. The wanting to be on the other side was performance. He intended to be found alive. Why? Follow the money. Follow the fraud investigation. By January 2020, Anthony Todt was facing federal charges for healthcare fraud. His physical therapy practice was being investigated. His business was collapsing. He was over $100,000 in debt. His landlord was evicting him. Creditors were suing him. Everything he'd built, the successful practice, the Florida vacation home, the Disney trips, the image of suburban perfection, was disintegrating. And it was about to become very public, very embarrassing, very criminal. Prosecutors theorized that Anthony killed his family because he couldn't maintain the lifestyle he'd created through fraud. One investigator said, "I think he blamed his family for a lifestyle he couldn't maintain. That's the real motive, not the apocalypse, not Megan's depression, not reincarnation obsession." Anthony Todt built an illusion of success using insurance fraud. When that illusion collapsed, he eliminated everyone who would suffer from his failure, including his children. This is the narcissism at the core of family annihilation. The killer views their family as extensions of themselves. When the killer's life falls apart, they can't conceive of the family continuing without them, so they take everyone down, but they need a narrative that preserves their self-image. They can't be the villain. So, they become the hero who tried to save everyone, which is why Anthony claimed they needed to go to the other side together, or the victim who was driven to it by a mentally ill spouse, or the confused defendant who doesn't remember and couldn't have been responsible. Anthony Todt has told 4 different stories, but here's what we actually know. On a night in mid-December 2019, someone drugged Megan Todt, 13-year-old Alek, 11-year-old Tyler, and 4-year-old Zoe with lethal doses of Benadryl. Someone suffocated 4-year-old Zoe by covering her mouth and nose until she died. Someone suffocated and stabbed the 2 boys. Someone suffocated Megan and then stabbed her after she was already dead. Someone wrapped all 4 bodies in blankets and positioned them in the master bedroom like they were sleeping. Someone killed the family dog. Someone lived in that house with those decomposing bodies for 3 weeks. Someone used the victims' phones to text family members. Someone avoided welfare checks. Someone pretended to be surprised when federal agents found the bodies. Someone told detectives he wanted to join them on the other side. Someone confessed in detail, then retracted, then claimed memory loss, then sued from prison claiming to be the victim. That someone was Anthony Todt. The evidence is overwhelming. The forensics are clear. The timeline is established. The confession, the one you heard at the very beginning, was detailed and accurate. And yet he continues to claim he's the victim, even from prison, even after conviction, because family annihilators don't accept responsibility. They construct narratives. They revise history. They make themselves the protagonist of every version. The Todt children, Alek, Tyler, and Zoe, don't get to tell their story. Megan doesn't get to defend herself. Breezy the dog is gone. An entire family erased, but their absence tells us everything we need to know. Because in every family annihilation case, the story isn't about why they died. It's about why the killer thought their own comfort, their own image, their own narrative was worth more than 5 lives. Anthony Todt's 4 versions of events are all different, but they all have one thing in common. In every version, he's the one who deserves sympathy. He's the one who suffered. He's the one who was wronged. And in every version, the family he killed doesn't matter at all. That's not a confession. That's not trauma. That's not mental illness. That's narcissism. That's entitlement. That's a man who believed his family existed to serve his image, and when they couldn't anymore, they had to go. The story he told detectives in January 2020, the one that opened this video, was the truth. Everything that came after was performance. Don't let the revisions fool you. Don't let the blame shifting distract you. Anthony Todt killed his wife, 3 children, and dog. Then he lied about it, over and over and over. The only story that matters is the one the forensic evidence tells, and that story is clear. A father who couldn't face his failures killed the people who would have been embarrassed by them. That's what happened in Celebration, Florida in December 2019. That's what Anthony Todt did. And everything he said after that, including that opening statement about wanting to join them on the other side, was just noise designed to make him look like anything other than what he is. A destroyer of worlds. Thanks for listening all the way through. If you believe these cases deserve careful attention, consider subscribing. It helps keep this work going. And I genuinely want to hear your full take in the comments. What makes sense, what doesn't, and what you think investigators might have missed. The best discussions on this channel always come from you.